A warm welcome to everyone present here. I'm Priya Kandasamy, Content Marketing Strategist from Adyogi, and I'll be hosting your webinar today. We shall get started in few minutes. In the meantime, it would be great if you can introduce yourselves in the chat box below. Without further ado, let's get started. If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die, says Warren Buffett. Well, e-commerce is definitely one of the ways to make money while you sleep. The buying trends have changed tremendously in the last few years, and e commerce has seen a boom during this pandemic. Here's a quick poll for you. Today's webinar is on the three essential pillars to build a successful e commerce business. The speakers of today's webinar are Narendra Mahajan, the CEO and co founder of ODN Digital Services, Anshuk Agarwal, the CEO and co-founder of Adyogi, and Pranshu Kacholia, the Vice President of ClickPost. We have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please keep your questions coming in the Q&A session below. The first pillar for today is using data and design to manifest creative ideas, and we have Narinder from Odeon Digital Services to talk about it. Being a retail specialist for over 18 years, Narinder has worked with game-changing organizations across different industries in consumer retail. He took his entrepreneurial plunge in 2015 by co-founding the ODN Digital Services, where they help over 150 consumer brands in achieving their e-commerce goals. Thank you for being with us, Narinder.
Thanks a lot.
Over to you. You can start your presentation now.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and have a great evening ahead. I think wonderful topic, wonderful time to discuss this when everyone is trying to go online today. And a lot of frenzy weekend sense. So since we belong to digital space, a lot of brands, a lot of manufacturers, sellers, everybody is trying to explore the online channels, and so we have tried to, all three of us have tried to put something together so that we all can make good use of the opportunity and make a mark for our brands, for our businesses, in these current times. So I'll quickly, what I'm going to cover is largely the first step of stepping into digital spaces, which is the presentation of the product, the presentation of the brand, which is digital medium largely. And I'm sure the brand and the seller, the manufacturer has already invested heavily in terms of designing the collection or the range of the products, or understood the technical and the offline or the online distribution logistics. Where to sell, how to sell, but now the first step is to how to present the products in a manner that it stands out. Looking at millions of uploads in terms of new articles that happen over across the globe in a month. It's very essential for us to understand that truly standing out. For truly standing out, we have to understand what the consumer we are talking to, what is our core strength, what is the data saying, what are the trends, and then mix up all of these things, and then move forward in a very scientific way. Creative presentation comes later, but I guess science plays a very important role in deciding how to go ahead. So something the kind of mix that we have tried to do in today's session, so that all of us can benefit out of it. Let's understand it's very, very simple. When you're online, you are in the business of selling images. It's absolutely clear you are not selling products. Products are actually is something that is reaching to the customers later when they open the packages, they feel the product. That's when obviously that's the real selling. But when you're getting the transaction converted on an e-commerce platform, we have to understand we are selling images, right? A few things I'll quickly touch upon. What recent data tells us how customer preferences are shifting across the globe. 86% of the buyers, as it is expected, that they're going to pay more, even if it is little higher than the competition or other brands in the market, if the experience that they get by buying or by wearing or using the product or the after sales service or the presentation of the product. If that experience of storytelling of quality is great, they're ready to pay more. Because I think in last decade, Indian e-commerce particularly has seen a lot of brands coming and going because there were it was kind of an influx of everybody can sell online, but I think that period is over. Customers are very smart, they are very educated, they know what to buy, how to buy, and they're looking for real good quality experience. And I think it is not the price anymore that we should be talking about when we're selling online. Another very interesting, data that I would want to discuss is that the attention span of an online consumer has reduced drastically. We have just a window of 3 to 5 seconds. I'm sure Anshuk, since he's into complete, the spectrum of performance marketing, he would know, and he can talk maybe more about it. But the span that the average consumer has now is available to us as brands, as marketeers, is just 3 to 5 seconds, which is one third of what a attention span of a goldfish is. So they will even forget. Attention span doesn't mean that they have given you that much time. They might not have given you that much time, but that's the time when they're remembering a post or a product or an ad or something like that. So we have to be really catchy. We have to be really creative. We have to try GIFs. We have to engage the customers more than 5 seconds by doing videos, by doing GIFs, by doing great copies. That's where our focus should be when we work towards digital content. There are very scientific ways of looking at digital content when you are maybe designing a newsletter or a website for your e-commerce store. There are very scientific natural eye movement patterns, which are F or Z eye patterns. Maybe you guys can Google and study it more, but it's very interesting that how English readers particularly, how do they read the data, particularly the text data. So another very interesting point that I think your designers or you should know. Focus on the product. Very cliched, but data, if you read this data, this is very interesting that a model looking at the product will get you much more, the product will get much more attention. If the model is looking at you, the first attention goes on the model and then on the product. So you have to make up your mind where you want the attention to be. We all want that the product should be in focus. So we have to even make the models or the space around it make the product truly stand out, and so that the first initial focus that goes should be on the product or on the main line of communication, whatever we want to do. This is something maybe designers or architects, particularly who are in this forum, they would know that there's a very scientific way of designing few things, and we follow that in ODN as well as all the graphics that we for the website or for emails, which have a larger space to design, of course. We try to use this golden ratio, which has been derived over years, looking at millions of natural creations around us. If you will study this more, you will understand the flowers, the trees, the everything beautiful around us is the seashells. A lot of things that you will see which has a pattern around it. You will see that that pattern is coming out of this mathematical ratio that nature has gifted us. That's how our eyes, our minds are trained to look at something and have that attention towards us to make it look beautiful. So another very interesting data point. Again, one very interesting case study I would like to bounce off here, where we used data and tech and plugged it in the content requirements of a global giant in watches and leather products. This brand is Fossil. Now Fossil, they have many brands under their kitty. They have licenses for all kinds of premium and luxury brands that you can see on the left that I have mentioned. They are across 150 countries, and it's a $2 billion group. We got this, opportunity to work with their Hong Kong office, and this is what the current situation was when we took up the project. I think 2.5, 3 years back. So they had, 9 countries in Asia Pacific, which were doing content on 40 marketplaces, and each country had their own independent local teams, which were doing their own content independently. Although the designs, the watches, the collections were very similar in nature across multiple countries. So we got this problem statement that there's a lot of duplicacy that is happening. There's a lot of inefficiency in the system because there's too much of cost being borne by the global group, because every country was shooting on their own. They were doing their own listing content. There were uniformity issues because every country had their own way of shooting and editing images, and there's no control on the data. It was all scattered, and no control over the assets, digital assets. What we did an extensive research of all the 40 marketplaces. We collected all the data together, and we realized that we might need 16 image angles and 160 attributes for each product, which will be called as the master data for each product. And when we created a solution, we also tried to create a tech solution with a partner company, and we mapped almost like thousands of variables in the backend. So 160 attributes, 16 angles got translated into thousands of drop downs, thousands of attributes across multiple marketplaces. And now this tool can throw a sheet which is ready to upload sheet for say Rakuten, Japan, which is like 2 minutes job for the Fossil local team in Japan. So we did all this, and we trained 9 countries teams across the globe. So you see that the problem gets solved when we try to put data, text, and creative understanding together. It is not just that we always try to put a creative solution ahead of data and design. I think there's a lot of science behind what you see that is live on Amazon or a Myntra or a Noon or Souk.com or Nykaa. So there's these are not just images. There's a lot of science behind what is going on in that space. These are the benefits. The project is still is giving a lot of benefit to the group. Almost like it's fully implemented across 9 countries, and the project is still with us, and we are very happy working on multiple more similar solutions like these with the group. I would also very quickly I'll just quickly tell you about us as well. What do we do? We truly believe that every brand, every product has its unique story, and Odeon is out there to truly to translate that into a visual format where we can explain that story out and make it connect with the consumer stories. So this is what we believe, that till the time we understand what the consumer story is for your brand, your consumers. Till the time we don't understand their story, we can't create a product story or the brand story, because without that there will be no connect. So that's where Odeon truly wants to work, that we create storylines that matches with the consumer story so that they can connect and engage better. We have 5 years in the business. We have 3 offices, 150 active clients, a lot of creative people working and helping us out. We have 20 product categories expertise and exposure to 30 marketplaces across 9 countries today. Our offering is, it's all content truly content. It's right from the strategy, what kind of content you should do. The strategy involves consumer understanding, brand understanding, and then arriving at a guideline, which includes, whether the content is for marketplaces or for your e-commerce store, whether it's listing content or creative shoots for the social media or for banners. Then we are very deep into designing banners and creatives, emailers, a lot of videos and social media content as well. Few brands that we work with, very proud. Most of these would be 3 years, 3.5 years, working with us out of 5 years of our existence. There are three, directors in the company. We all come from fashion and retail and e-commerce understanding. I have spent almost like 18 years. Ashna has spent 18 years in the industry. Udar, who heads the operations, he has spent over 12 years in the retail industry. So largely, when you go online, when you are trying to go online and trying to sell online, two things where I would like to stress upon, considering my company's background. One is cataloging content. You should always look at both the departments very differently, although there are many connecting dots in between both of them. But cataloging content and digital marketing content are two separate areas where you should invest when you go ahead. Cataloging content will give you your catalog shoots, your catalog videos, your infographics, A+ content, stuff that will help your product to stand out. The presentation of the product should stand out truly. And digital marketing content is how you really market those products out, that you do through banners, through your e-commerce website, through your social media, through your digital ads. So both, digital marketing content should be in sync with the larger brand umbrella, and cataloging content should be oriented towards what the marketplace or the competition is addressing to, largely how are they presenting their products. Because if you go on Amazon today, after reviews, if you don't have great content, I think credibility is lost immediately. A lot of brands today that work with us, be it Wildcraft, Chayos, Chumbak, a lot of Marks and Spencer, a lot of brands are spending enormous amount of money on cataloging content because they really want their product to stand out when there are hundreds of brands competing on the same space. I think that is it from my side, Priya. I guess will the questions happen now or later? How you want to?
So we're planning to have the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Yeah. Thank you so much, Narinder. It was very insightful. We now have Anshuk Agarwal from Adyogi to throw some light on our second pillar, building an efficient strategy to optimize digital ads seamlessly. Anshuk comes with over 10 years of experience in marketing and strategy consulting. He has worked with over 200 e-commerce brands in the last 6 years, helping them in scaling using Facebook and Google Ads. Adyogi is a cloud-based enterprise SaaS platform that automates online sales for e-commerce stores worldwide. Over to you, Anshuk.
Thanks, Priya. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be a part of this webinar. I think I really liked a few points which Narinder mentioned. The first which stood out was you don't sell products, you sell images. Right? I think that was a very, very powerful point. And you also mentioned focus on the product. So I'll talk a little bit more about it in my talk today, and let's probably straight jump into it. So my talk today is going to be focusing more on, let's say, for example, you got your products, you got your website. Of course, ODN plays a very important role in putting all the cataloging on your website. Now, the first thing you'll have to do once all that is done is figure out how do you get your customers from. Right? And I mean, we all know that while organic takes time to build, your first 100 or let's say 1,000 customers primarily comes from the paid channel. Right? So I'll focus on a few levers you have to get it right to make your paid ads work. Okay? And the first point which I want to drive here is which platforms to choose, right? And I know there are, all of us know that Facebook, Instagram are the key ones. Then you have Google, you have YouTube. There are also long tail platforms like maybe TikTok in some regions or Snapchat. Right? But as a brand which is like probably focusing on the first few thousand customers a month, I would highly recommend that focus on Facebook, Instagram as your first platform. Because across all DTC customers we have seen, 60 to 80% of your sales come from these two platforms. Of course, if you are a slightly more intent-driven product, then you might focus a little more on Google, in which case Google might drive like around 40% of your sales. But still the majority of your sales comes from Facebook as a channel. So today I'll focus a little more on social platforms, which is Facebook and Instagram. Now, once you start, let's say, figuring out your social strategy, which is Facebook and Instagram ads, right? Two questions come to everybody's mind, right? How do I really scale my spends or sales, right, to like $10,000 per month? And at the same time, how do I get superior efficiency? 10x plus is obviously very ambitious, but how do I get like good efficiency from my ads? And usually the scale and efficiency are actually at odds with each other. Yeah, you get good scale, then you start losing out efficiency. You want to get good efficiency, you have to compromise on the scale. But this need not be the case, right? And that's what I'll talk about today. I'll start with like two small examples of brands we have worked with. Clarks, of course, is a global shoe retailer. Around 2 years back, when we started working with them, their website sales were less than 5% of their marketplace sales, as in total online sales, right? And the website sales have now scaled very rapidly. Today, they get to like a 30% of their share of online sales comes from their website. So it is possible to get good scale using your direct-to-consumer website. And the second is it's also possible to get good efficiency using your brands, right? And I'm talking about a women fashion brand called Bunai. We have been working for the last few years. It's one of the it's now become like a reasonably well-known brand. And they consistently get a very high efficiency from their ads. They've been maintaining like a 10x plus efficiency, which for any e-com brand is a very good efficiency. The question is then, how do you get scale and efficiency both, right? Now, just before we jump in, this is what I just plotted a couple of days ago. This is like a plot of efficiency versus scale for a lot of our brands, right? And you see that there is a clutter, right? A lot of brands are able to get scale, but not that great efficiency. That's towards the right. Some brands are able to get very good efficiencies, but not a great scale, which is on the left. For a successful DTC brand, you want to be one of those green circles, right? Where you get like a decent efficiency and a good scale. So that's where I think every brand, once they are past their initial few months, the first 1,000 customers, should be focusing on. And today, let me just jump into it. So these are the 4 levers, I think, as a brand, which you should be able to successfully pull off if you really want to achieve both efficiency and scale, right? And the first lever is, how do I really find the right people to come to my website? And trust me, that's only the first lever. There are 3 more things you need to be focusing on. So how do I find the right people, right? And Narendra spoke about it very well. He said, you have to focus on products, right? And images. And that's exactly, I'll say again here, that your ads have to be product ads, right? They can't be a brand ad because you're not selling the brand. They can't be a banner of a category because you're not selling a category. At the end of it, people want to buy your products. So your ads should contain products, right? The second is, it's usually a good practice to have price in the ad copies. Now, I'm not saying that people are buying for the price, but if you have price in the ad copies, you're pre-qualifying your audience, right? They are okay paying that amount for your product. So usually if you have price, you end up getting better quality audience on your website who are more likely to purchase. And the last I would say on this particular slide is have a shop now button. Don't try to have like a learn more, know more, download now, because you want people to come with the right intent to purchase, right? You want them to come to your website and you want them to buy your products. So just have the right call to action button, right? So that's how, from the creative point of view, you can ensure that you get the right traffic, okay? Now, how do you do it from the targeting point of view, right? Now, you have to understand that getting the right traffic is not only about targeting, it's also about creative, which I spoke about in the last slide. On the targeting front, there are some very cool targeting options on Facebook and Instagram. One of them is interests. interest group of your competitor brands, right? And that's something which works really well. I've shown a screenshot here of brands like Forever 21, H&M, Zara, Sabyasachi. All these are interest groups on Facebook, right? These are people who have liked these pages, who have interacted with these brands, and you can very easily target them for your own brand. So very powerful targeting. Other than that, one good targeting is lookalikes of your customers. Right? These are people who are most similar to your customers. But then again, it need not be your customers. It could be lookalikes of people who have added products to cart, lookalikes of people who have come to your Facebook page. So any sort of a lookalike of people who have engaged with your brand. And just for everybody to understand, lookalike is a feature which Facebook has rolled out, where from its 200, 300 million odd customer user base, it finds those people who are most similar to your customers or to your page visitors. So again, a good targeting option, which works in e-com. And the last on the targeting front, I would say optimize for conversions. I know it's a slightly technical point here, but when you start your ads on Facebook, you will see that Facebook has a lot of options. It will give you option to get reach, awareness, traffic, engagement. Now, those are great options, but for a direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand, which wants to get sales on your website, conversions is one of the best options you can choose on Facebook. Now, picking the right objective also makes a huge difference, because Facebook then finds those people who are most likely to purchase and brings them to your website. Now, that was the first lever, right? How do I find relevant people? The second lever is, how do I get them to see more products, right? And here I think there are two things I'll talk about. Number one, pay very close attention to the page speed of your website, right? A lot of times what happens is people click on the ad copy, and it takes like 5 seconds, 10 seconds for your website to load. And in the process, people drop off. A common metric is around 20% of your people, they click on your ad copy and they never reach your website. But in some cases, this number could be 40%, 50%. So be very cognizant of the speed of your website. Google Page Speed Insights helps a lot. The faster your website, the lesser will be the dropout. And second point here is, like I said previously also, you're showing ads of products on Facebook, but when people click on those ads, try to land them on the product page. So don't land them on the home page and leave them to search for your product. Instead, land them on the product page so that they don't have to search for your product again, right? A simple rule of thumb on e-commerce is, the lesser the clicks to conversion, the higher the conversion rate. So if you land them on the category page, you are leaving them to scout for your product, then find the right product, click on it, and then convert. Instead, you land them on the product page so that within 3 clicks, they can complete the purchase. So that was the second lever. The third lever is, now you have found the right person, they have come to your website and they have clicked on the product, they like the product. Now, how do you push them to complete the purchase, right? And here I'll show a very small, I would say 30-second video of a brand and the website experience of the brand. So while we browse through the brand, just think in your minds as to where you think the users might be dropping off, right? So this is the product page of the brand. You have multiple call to action buttons. And this is the checkout page of the brand, right? And I'm sure you guys, all of you must be able to figure out a few pointers on why people are dropping off on the website, right? And so this is my read on some of the pointers. Too many call to action buttons is not a great idea. Click to call on your website is never a great idea, because people might be browsing your website at odd hours and you don't have a person sitting 24/7 trying to pick up those calls, right? Too many social icons, again, not a great idea, because typically people bounce off when they click on social icons. You want them to like complete the purchase. You don't want them to go back to the Facebook page, because you have paid Facebook money to get them to your website in the first place. Investor relations on the checkout page is not a great idea at all. These are your customers. They're not interested in investor relations. So don't show them the unnecessary links on your checkout page. Pop-ups on checkout page, again, are very distracting, especially if there is no clear way to close the pop-up. Right? And the last I would say is guest checkout is super important. Right? They're just willing to buy your product. You don't have to make them sign up on your website. So the point which I'm trying to make here is very simple, that you can get great efficiency from your ads even without touching your Facebook campaigns. Your website actually plays a very, very key role. Some of these small changes can double your efficiency without even going to your Facebook ad account. And that's something which every brand has to understand. Okay? And just last lever, another, I think, couple of minutes where I'll wrap it up, is how do I get them to buy high value products, right? And I have a small example here. As a brand, you need to understand that selling on your website and selling on marketplace is very different. Okay? When you sell on Amazon, they charge you a percentage of sale. You sell a 300 rupee product, or let's say a $20 product, they will charge you 20%. You sell a $200 product, they will charge you 20%, right? But on the website, it's different. Facebook doesn't charge you for the amount of sales which you are making. They charge you for the traffic, right? So what we have usually seen is typically a cost of acquisition from Facebook can be anywhere between $5 to $10, right? Sometimes even higher than that, but it's never lower than $5. Okay? So if you have a website which has lower AOV products, average order value products, try to bundle your products. Try to increase your average order value to $15, $20, $25, because that's where you can make money. If you have an average order value of $7, $10, it becomes very hard to make any money. So that's it. I think these are the 4 levers I spoke about today. Try to turn all of them in the right direction and you get good scale and efficiency. And a little bit about Adyogi. We are a marketing automation platform. We sync with your website, create intelligent ads, targeting and optimization across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Amazon. A couple of brands we work with, and happy to connect over LinkedIn. Reach out to me. I'm quite active there. Over to you, Priya.
Thanks, Anshuk. That was indeed very insightful. Just a reminder, we have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar, so please keep your questions coming in the Q&A section below. The next pillar for today's webinar is enhancing post-purchase experience while reducing overall returns. And we have Pranshu, who leads growth at ClickPost. He has worked with multiple e-commerce giants across India, Middle East, and Southeast Asia, helping them improve their post-purchase customer experience and reduce RTO. Over to you, Pranshu.
Thanks, Priya. Hi, everyone. So Anshuk and Narinder covered the part of what you should do to get customers to buy the product. Now we're going to talk about what to do once the product has been purchased, right? How do you ensure that the post-purchase experience is really good, right? I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right. Hope everyone can see it. Okay, before we begin, a little bit about ClickPost. ClickPost helps e-commerce companies improve their post-purchase customer experience and shipping. One of the largest players in Asia. We work with pretty much most of the large companies in India, Middle East, as well as Southeast Asia. Right? Now, today, I'm going to talk about 3 specific tips that everyone should keep in mind. The first one is you should own the entire tracking experience, right? Now, what a lot of e-commerce companies do is they leave it up to the carrier to send those tracking updates to their end customer, engage with them. And this actually is a really bad practice, right? This is the moment for you to ensure that you connect with your customers and they know that the brand cares for me even after I've made the purchase, right? Now, I'll show you how an email from a carrier looks like, right? So this is a product that I purchased from UPS, and it's like a really bad tracking page. If you look at the tracking message, in fact, if you look at the tracking mails of companies like Delivery, Aramax, these are even worse than this, as opposed to something that you can build for your customers, right? This is a tracking mail that you should have, wherein there are very clear details of where the product is. And you can also do some cross-selling here by putting in the products below. Similar to how this email looks like, there is also a tracking page that a lot of e-commerce companies direct their customers to. This is again a tracking page of USPS. You really don't know how to track the order, right? And the entire branding belongs to USPS, as opposed to what you can build on your own, which is this kind of a page. Yeah, this is a page which you can build on your own. Now, what we've seen is that for every order, a customer comes to this tracking page 4 times, right? So you have a huge opportunity to, one, engage with them while they're waiting for their orders, and 2, also cross-sell them additional products, right? So in the tracking page that you can design for your customers, you can ensure that the tracking details are very neatly put in. There can be some intelligent updates where if there is any delay or there is any exception in the shipping. And then you can have these banners and product recommendations here, right? In fact, I have another better example of it. Yeah, this is the one. So if you see here, this brand has put in a lot of product recommendations here, and we've actually seen up to 1% sales coming from just these product recommendations, right? Because again, these are customers who are coming back to you to engage with you. That's the right frame of mind where you want to push in additional products as well. All right, tip number 2. So you need to keep your customers updated of shipping delays, right? Again, goes back to the first point that you just cannot leave the experience to the carrier. You yourself have to own it. So how technical you have to manage it is, all these different courier partners or carriers have their APIs, right? You need to have direct API integrations with them, or use a platform like ClickPost, which is already integrated with all the courier partners. The moment you have those real-time updates coming in from carriers, you can enable these smart updates around delays, stuck shipments, or lost shipments to your end customer, right? This actually helps you in 2 things. One, your customer does not call you up again and again to check the status of your order. They are not going to leave poor comments on social media. And 2, the chance of the customer canceling the order also reduces significantly, right? So RTOs, or return to origins, reduce if you're ensuring that in any case of delays or exceptions, you keep your customers updated. All right, tip number 3, and probably the most important one. So you need to have an NDR management or a failed delivery management system to reduce your RTO percentage. RTO is return to origin. These are the orders which could not be delivered to the customer, and hence they have to be brought back to the original warehouse, right? And NDR are essentially the cases where the delivery partner on the ground tried to make a delivery attempt, but they could not deliver it. It's called as failed delivery or delivery exception, right? So once a delivery exception happens, if you're not monitoring, if you're not managing it properly, there is a very high chance that the product would come back to your original warehouse, which means you've lost the sale, the customer is not now unhappy, and you're bearing the entire 2-way cost of freight of the courier partner, right? So we have actually seen RTO percentage reduced by half by just adopting an NDR management system. So this is an extremely important thing that I would recommend to every e-commerce company out there, right? So I'm going to talk about 4 steps that ClickPost usually takes in such cases. This is something that you yourself can build as well. The first thing is, the moment a failed delivery happens, right? The delivery partner tried to deliver the order, but they could not deliver it. Immediately, if you have API integrations with these courier partners, you would come to know of it, right? Once you know that an exception has happened, the next step is that you categorize it into different standardized buckets, right? Maybe the exception happened due to customer was not present at the home, the address was incorrect, or any other such cases. Immediately, because this entire thing is automated, you trigger a communication to your end customer seeking their response, right? So for example, suppose it was a case of the courier partner not being able to find the address. And this is extremely common in Middle East, where there is no PIN code at all, right? So in all these cases, you trigger a communication to your end customer seeking inputs from them. You ask them provide us additional landmark or an additional point to help make the delivery successful. The moment they provide this input to you, the next task for you is to send this information immediately to the courier partner. Right? Once the courier partner systems are updated with the revised information that your customer has provided, the chance of a successful delivery increases by 2 to 3x. Right? Now, here, what a lot of e-commerce companies do is so there are essentially three types of companies. The first one, they leave it completely up to the carrier. The carrier is going to make multiple attempts. If they are not able to deliver it, that's fine, the product would come back. The second category is which gets this data from the carrier. They have a call center team. That call center team keeps on calling every customer on the next day. Now, that's a highly inefficient system. The best way to do it is, instead of a person calling up for every order, you need to have an automated system which automatically collects feedback from the customers. In cases where there is no feedback provided by the customer, that's when you ask your call center team to call them up. Right? A lot of things like addresses, it's very difficult to provide these kind of inputs over phone call. Right? So you need to make this entire system as a self-serve portal. One more nuance that comes into this entire RTO thing is there are a lot of fake delivery attempts that courier partners on the ground make, right? And this is especially very common in Asia, not so much in US, but in Asia, it's extremely common. There are a lot of small delivery boys out there, and they might not be making the correct attempt. Now, in these cases, what happens is people resort to, your end customers are going to resort to social media to report these cases. For them, you as a brand, you are the one who made a fake delivery attempt, right? And you would see social media full of these kind of comments from end customers. Now, in these cases, again, what you have to do is, the moment a failed delivery happens, immediately send out a communication to your end customer and seek response directly from them. Don't let them go to these different alternative platforms to provide the response. You collect the response and then you manage the entire next steps from there. All right, that's it from my side. Keep your online shoppers super happy. That's something that ClickPost enables you to do. All these three tips that we discussed can be enabled by ClickPost as well. So in case any of you are looking to use ClickPost, feel free to drop me an email here.
Thank you, Pranshu. I'm sure we all have our next steps from here. We'll begin our Q&A session now. Our first question for today: what's the average ROAS one should look for at the start for a response for a positive or negative sign in male casual wear? This question is from Malaysia. Anshu, can you take this question?
Yes, of course. I think the return on ad spend depends on a lot of factors, but one of the key one is average order value. I spoke about it in my presentation also. So let's say, for example, you have an average order value of around $20 to $30, which let's say in India would be like around 1,200 to 2,000 rupees. Then a good ROS to expect would be somewhere around 4x to 5x, because your customer acquisition cost would be, let's say, $5 to $7, or let's say around 300 to 500 INR, and you can easily expect like a 4x. Having said that, it takes around 3 months for the performance to stabilize. If you are a very new store, you should not be expecting like a 4x in the first month itself. Typically, 3rd month to 6th month is where we should be able to get to this return on ad spend.
The next question is from Nishant. How to reduce RTO? I already have a call center team, but my RTO is still about 25%. Pranshu, can you take this question?
Yep, sure. So yeah, I think 25% is actually a very high RTO number. RTO number depends a lot from category to category. Typically, it ranges from 4 to 5% in pharma to apparel and cosmetics typically go to 15% on the higher end. So 25% is a very high RTO percentage. I think a quick win there could be to have a complete NDR management system. I would assume that it would probably reduce by half by just having an NDR management system. After that, you can go for some solutions around reducing the delays or selecting the better courier the best courier partner for every pin code, the ones which are performing the best. So those can be a couple of things that can be done.
Thanks, Pranshu. The next question from Ritesh. Could we start our own business through our own website, or must we go with sellers like Flipkart, Amazon, or other marketplaces? Which could be better? Anshu, can you take this question?
Yes, I can add some perspective to it. Maybe even Narinder might be able to add on to it. So what I can say is, look, it depends a lot on the category and the product you are selling, right? What I've seen is, if you are into, let's say, mass market products, let's say you're selling t-shirts for like 500, 700 rupees, you're probably selling intent categories, let's say baby or gardening tools, these kind of categories. Then typically I've seen Amazon gives a much better scale. Okay. On the other extreme, if you are selling, let's say, premium apparel, let's say $1,500, $20 to $30 AOV, or even $50 AOV, right? Marketplaces typically are not able to cater to such high premium products. So I've usually seen that the brand websites are able to scale better. Like the example of Clarks, which I gave, it is a slightly premium footwear brand. Right? So it depends a lot on category to category. Even for a premium, I would say, marketplace plus website might be a better strategy, because we have seen that marketplace helps you get better efficiencies on your website. And when you market on Facebook and drive traffic to your website, you get more sales on marketplace. So kind of it's like a cross marketing sort of an experience which works. Maybe Narendra, you must have had worked with a lot of brands, so you would have something to add there.
Yeah, so the first suggestion I would give, or we normally give to new brands who are starting off, if as Anshuk very rightly mentioned, it's sometimes the decision has to be taken considering what kind of consumer you are targeting. If the consumer is already out there on Amazon, Myntra, it's always better to test the market before you launch your own web store and start spending money. It's always good to have your own customer base, a lot of data flowing in, what kind of price points, what kind of products are selling more, so that you can, when you go live and start spending your own money before the order actually happens, because normally in marketplaces is a place where you pay when the order actually falls in. When you go a D2C way, where you start selling yourself from your own portal, you have to spend before the order is placed. So that requires a little bit of investment. So it's always advised that test the market, test the product, what is selling, what is not selling. But at the same time, if the product is premium, we don't have too many great marketplaces in the country today to showcase. Tata Click Luxury is there, Indilux is there, Jaipur is there. So there are few premium portals as well, but again, if possible, start selling there. But I guess price points, expensive price points always require a storytelling, always require a deeper connect with the audience, which can happen through the experience of the brand, of the story has to be translated through a website and a very powerful social media platform. That's how, I would suggest.
Thanks, Narinder. Thanks, Anshuk. Our next question is, what would be the right balance for product catalog or promotional material between videos or pictures? Which one has a better engagement or customer response in your experience? Narinder, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, sure. Right balance, today everyone knows, videos always have a better engagement. It's as I mentioned in my presentation, that the attention span is of 3 to 5 seconds now. It is extremely important. If you go on our website also, we have tried to put few things which have reduced the bounce rate to 5%, which is, I guess, we have tried to do things which are very engaging. We have tried to put some GIFs, some videos, some moving elements, which actually catches the attention. Of course, but at the same time, videos are expensive. So, for the product presentation, multiple channels, you need to find strike a good balance between what works for your pocket, what works for the brand, for the product. Sometimes, for example, a very simple thing like a pen or a mouse might not need a video presentation, but a product like a athletic, running shoe, or maybe a very high-end laptop or a mobile phone might need video presentations or various rich media content to present your products well. So I guess it's a lot to do with what is catching more attention and what is your pocket allowing.
Sure. Anshul, do you have anything to add on to this?
Yes, I think a couple of things. So of course, videos are preferred, but I've also seen that it depends on the category also to some extent, right? So I'll give you two extreme examples. Let's say if you're selling a health and wellness product and you have like a immunity is like the new buzzword these days. So if you have a health and wellness product which is like an immunity booster or something, right? It's very hard to sell it on image. Because what can you say? You say an immunity booster and you show an image of a bottle, but there are like 100 brands selling immunity boosters which have bottles, right? So video becomes important. It could be an influencer video, it could be a testimonial video, it could be a user video. On the contrary, if extreme example, if you're selling an apparel, right? Let's say you're selling a t-shirt, right? And you pretty much, it's a collar t-shirt, orange color. You pretty much know what the product is, right? Maybe the cloth is one open question, which you can just write 100% cotton, you're pretty much there, right? So for apparel, videos are not as critical, right? You can still sell on apparel on images, but for the health and wellness, videos are very critical. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Anshuk. Our next question is from Harshit. If I have my own tracking page, how will customers know about it? Also, is it really worth the effort? Pranshu, do you want to take this question?
Yep. So, all right. So there are two parts to it. One, how would your customers know of it? So there are multiple places where you can put in your tracking pages link. One is your website. On the front page of the website, there can be a track button. Second, in the My Order section, there can be a track button. And three, so this tracking page goes hand in hand with sending communication to your customers through different medium. So when you're sending an SMS to your customer telling them that the product is in transit, you probably have a tracking link there. That's how you get your customers on the tracking link. The second part, is it worth it? It's definitely worth it. One, you are going to get 1% additional sales just from this tracking page, right? So that's going to take care of all the money that you spent on it. And then there is a huge amount of benefit that you get in terms of customer retention and building customer loyalty, because now customers are not going to those terrible looking pages that I've shown you, right? So definitely worth going for this.
Okay, thanks, Pranshu. The next question is, I'm an education sector. Can I switch to e-commerce? We have this from Anuradha. Anshuk, do you want to take this question? Anshuk, we can't hear you. Anshuk is still not audible.
Okay, I think can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you'll have to repeat the question.
So the question was, if they are in the education sector, should it be fine for them to like move into e-commerce?
Got it. So see, e-commerce is not like one vertical, right? E-commerce is anything which you sell online. Right? If you are in education and you probably are in your traditional education medium, you can always shift your education business online. Like for example, just 2 weeks back, I was talking to one of the large publishers in India, right? And they sell all these education books like Learn C, Learn Python, Learn SQL, right? And they used to always sell on their physical stores, but now because of COVID, a lot has moved online, right? So for them, the question is, can I move my education business online, right? And you can certainly do that. A lot of people are out there buying books online. The added advantage is now you can also think about digital content, right? You can sell digital books online. It need not be a hard copy. And when you do a digital business online, the profit margins can be high because you don't have a fixed COGS. You don't have to manufacture. You don't have to deliver. There is no RTO. So Pranshu is not required in that. So pretty much all of it is profit, right? So I think for an education industry, e-commerce could be a great next step.
Narinder, do you have anything to add on to this?
Yeah. So it's a very, it's a very personal this thing also, but I guess education today offers a lot of e-commerce opportunities in terms of, selling, digitized education content and a lot of courses and other things. I think a good mixed hybrid of both the things should be a good try, I guess.
Sure. One last question. What are the things to keep in mind in order to build a scalable e-commerce? Pranshu, do you want to take this question?
Yes, sure. So for scalability, there is one part of getting the customers, which I'm not the best person to answer. But the second part, which is around delivering a good experience, the first thing is you have to make sure that you're tied up with good courier partners. You have an algorithm so that you select the best partner for every order. And once you have shipped the order, that's when you have to make sure that the delays and the exceptions are minimized, the customer experience is good, so that the customer comes back to the store and leaves a good review, right? So handling the entire post-purchase shipment journey is something that you have to be very conscious of.
Anshuk, would you like to add on to this?
I think 2 points. One, I feel that product market fit is super important, right? See, a lot of people focus a lot on marketing strategies or building the right website or building the post consumer experience, but sometimes they miss out on the product market fit. At the end of it, I think the product market fit is not right, then they may not help. Okay. The second I would say is repeat purchase is extremely important, right? Because when you're getting your customer for the first time, chances are Facebook is making money, but you are not making money, right? Because at the end of it, your customer acquisition costs are not low. Plus you have delivery cost, you have sometimes RTO cost, you have a lot of add-on packaging costs, right? So typically, I've seen that most brands make very thin margins on when they're acquiring the customer for the first time. When the customer comes back again and buys from your website, that's a neat margin because the acquisition cost is almost zero. Emails are free, SMSs are largely free, WhatsApp is largely free. So just focus on your post-purchase experience. If the customers are happy, they will come back, and that's how I think the money is to be made.
Sure. Thanks, Anshuk. Narinder, would you like to add on to this?
Yeah, I guess Anshuk and Pranshu, both have covered. I think the most important aspects of e-commerce, logistics and, repeat customers, that's where the whole meat of e-commerce lies, truly speaking, that's where the money is. And that's where the leaks are, largely where we lose money, most of the brands. One important thing is, we always, say that, very important thing on which e-commerce runs is replenishment. I think very strong data analysis of, what is selling, what is not selling, and keeping your replenishments of the merchandise always on the track is what has helped thousands of sellers on Amazon and Myntra to earn, big amounts of money in past few years. So persistence and getting your product strategy right and your marketing strategy right is obviously important. But I guess using a lot of data analysis, having your own business business plan in place before you start doing anything, and then constantly monitoring it, plus a lot of data analysis. I think these are areas which are normally ignored. That's where I would strongly suggest to keep your eyes on.
Thank you, Narinder. We've come to the end of this webinar. I'm sure you've all received your offers in the chat section. A recording of this webinar is going to be sent to you post this webinar. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of it. Thank you, Narinder. Thank you, Anshuk. Thank you, Pranshu. Thank you for our entire team who also supported us from the back end to have this webinar running. Last but not the least, thanks to all the participants of this webinar as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks,
for
Priya.
joining.
Thanks, everyone, for joining in. Thanks a lot.
Everyone.